Well, hello, good morning everybody. Welcome back. Jiujitsu2000 here today. I'm back and I've got an interesting video for you. Today I want to talk about alcohol stoves or alcohol burners. I've gotten a lot of new subscribers that have came on board my channel due to the fact that they watched one of my soda can stove videos or my Arizona tea can stove video or my fancy feast video. So I want to say welcome to my channel, and I'm here to answer some very common questions that I see in reference to those stoves or burners. I want you to understand the difference between a burner and a stove. A stove is something that you can set your pot on and cook whatever you're cooking, whether it's boiling water or cooking a meal. A burner is something you cannot set your pot on, otherwise it'll extinguish the flame or have difficulty cooking your food. So a burner, generally speaking, requires something to set your pot on above the top of the burner. Okay, now these stoves slash burners, and I use this term loosely, I call everything a stove, so just I'm not politically correct on this at all, but the stoves slash burners that I make that are the alcohol cans technically are burners but can be used as stoves. I know that can be a bit confusing, and let me clarify. This is the regular soda can, penny can stove that I make. Okay, you notice I use the word stove. If I was to take a pot that has a recess on the bottom that matches up with the top of the burner head, I can set that on top of there, and you can see that the vents, the holes in which the flames come out, does not get compromised by this pot sitting on top. So in that case, I can actually put fuel in this and make this work like a stove. So I can set that down, put my penny on there, you know, after it's filled up, and get it primed and flumed. Flumed is the process of where the flames start coming out of the holes. Okay, the flume happens when pressure is developed inside of this to where the alcohol is basically boiling and it's creating a gas that shoots out of these holes. These holes in the center are fill holes, and they're also blocked by a penny. The way these stoves operate is the penny covers the holes once it's full, and the fuel develops pressure inside, and that when that penny's over there, the pressure can't escape, so it comes out of these holes in the forms of vapor. Then you light that, and that's what produces these beautiful flames. Now, in the event that you get too much pressure built up within this can, the pressure has nowhere to go. Your flames will get a little bit bigger, but if pressure continues to get higher, then it'll push that penny off of these vent holes and allow the pressure to vent out, and that's what keeps this safe. If you have a pot with a recess on it, it will sit on top and it won't block the holes in which the flames come out. So you can use that, you know, to boil water and things like that. Even if the pot does not have a recess, you can still set it on there, and the performance will lack a little bit. The reason the performance lacks a little bit when you do that, when you set them like that, is because your height of your pot, the bottom of your pot to the top of the burner head, is too close. Okay, now it'll continue to work, but the burner or stove, whichever you choose to call it, will suffer in performance. The ideal distance that I recommend putting the pot above the burner head is about 1 inch. So if you can get something, if you can get the pot up, you know, about an inch above the burner head, or an inch above the stove rather, you could produce much more effective boil times and things like that. So in that case, it's kind of a burner. They could truthfully be considered stove or burner because I've used them both ways. They're a lot more effective if you can get your pot about an inch above or a little inch and a half, something like that above, because the flames will come into contact with the pot and you'll get more performance. What kind of fuel do you use in these? I've used a large number of different fuels in testing, and I have found that alcohol is the best fuel. I've used gasoline. People have asked that. Can you use white gas? Can you use kerosene? Can you use gasoline? I've experimented with gasoline. I put gasoline in these, and they light up, and you get flames out of the holes. It's a very yellow flame. It's a very high kind of flame. That flame produces a ton of soot. It's a very dirty flame. One of the reasons why these stoves or burners are so popular is because they're silent and they don't weigh much. The insulation that's put inside of these when you make them, what is the purpose of that insulation? That insulation is put inside because it helps the fluming process. It helps this thing come to a bloom where the flames come out of these holes. And without that, it takes a lot more time to prime the stove, to get it hot and to get things going to where that process happens. So the insulation is important to speed that process up. People have left comments and they've been asking, well, that insulation made out of fiberglass is probably dangerous, creating all these toxic fumes, and it's dangerous, and you're cooking on that and all this. And I don't think there's much truth to that. That's just my opinion. If you were to take it in a laboratory and measure, I'm sure you'd find something. But these types of stoves or burners are used in a well-ventilated area, generally outdoors somewhere where those chemicals that are being produced or whatever they claim are not really going to be affecting you. You've got plenty of airflow. You're out in the woods somewhere. These are real good because they're silent. You're not scaring off the animals, things like that. So my opinion, the insulation doesn't hurt anything. There was some comments that came through talking about the insulation in the fact that why does it have to be fiberglass? Can you use cotton balls or cotton? Yes, you can. You can totally use cotton. It works great. And what it does is it serves as a wick, meaning if this thing falls over, all of your liquid's not going to come out rapidly. If you don't have something holding that liquid in and this thing tips over, all your liquid's gone. So that's another purpose of the insulation inside. Whether you're using cotton balls or old pairs of jeans or whatever you're using inside of there. Another thing that I saw, and I've experimented with it, and it seemed to work pretty good, was steel wool inside works good too. It's the amount of holes around the top of the can, the circumference, right? I call it diameter, but everybody corrects me and says it's circumference. The amount of holes is important. The more amount of holes that you have, the less pressure you're going to develop inside the can. So I recommend about 16 holes around the top of the can. Okay, if you got one like this that has about 24 holes, it still works great. It's easier to, I guess your flame stays together more or something like that. If you have 16 holes, you get more of a stove look or a burner look, kind of like your stove at home. So it just looks cooler, I think, with 16 holes, but they both perform pretty well. Burn time on these. How long do they last? Okay, so generally speaking, it really depends on how tall you make this. If you make it a little taller, obviously you put more fuel in it, it's going to last longer. But generally, a stove like this, maybe in this size, probably between 30 minutes and an hour. Okay, so something like that. What kind of fuels do you use, and what do you recommend is the best fuel? So let's talk about alcohol here. This is 70% isopropyl alcohol. Okay, I've used that. It works. It takes forever to get it to flume. It takes forever for it to get primed, but it does work once you get there. It produces a big kind of a yellowish tipped flame, so it's not a real hot flame. You can cook. It does work. However, let me show you this pot here. It does leave a little bit of layer of soot on the pot. You can see that right there. See that soot? Okay, so that's what happens with 70%. Leaves that soot on there. If you move up to 91% isopropyl alcohol, this works better. Okay, it'll light a little better. You have less soot on the stove. It'll flume a little quicker. It'll develop the flames a little faster. This fuel is a lot better. However, neither of these are my go-to fuel for these types of burners. The fuel that I recommend the most is denatured alcohol. This stuff is excellent fuel that's very clean burning, and it doesn't leave any soot on your pans or anything like that. It's a hot burn. You get a beautiful blue flame out of these burners, and it'll produce a lot of heat. You'll get your best boil times and things like that with fuel like that versus these other ones. Now there is another fuel that I really love. That's heat. This is found in the automotive section of the store. Don't get the red bottle of heat. Get the yellow bottle. The red one I've tested and it doesn't work that well. So the yellow bottle of heat is my favorite fuel. So you got least favorite to most favorite. Those are my favorite fuels. When you talk about gasoline, everybody thinks that gasoline is going to work so much better, and it does not. It creates a ton of soot. It's a very dirty thing. It looks pretty. I mean, it has these beautiful yellow flames. So if you're wanting it for lighting or something. Another thing that you'll notice when you burn automotive gasoline in these things is they'll tend to pop, like pop, pop. They'll make like a pop, pop every once in a while sound. So that can scare you, and your flames will kind of shoot out a little bit from time to time, but that's just my experience. I always say that the penny needs to be early 1982 or older. Okay, so 81, 80, 79, anything less than early 1982. The reason for that is because if you take these pennies, they're made of, majority of this penny is made out of copper. Okay, when you put that over there, the heat that's produced on these burners does not melt that copper. If you get a 1982 penny that's made mostly of zinc, and these temperatures get hot, the zinc will start to disform and it'll start to melt. They don't hold up to the temperatures, okay? So you want to make sure that you're staying away from 1982, late 82 pennies. You want older stuff. There's been questions, you know, can you use other coins? Can you use a quarter? I've used quarters. They work. I don't know if they're going to melt or not. Can you use nickels? Yeah, I've used them. I don't know what they're made of. I don't know if they're going to melt or not. Dimes? Yeah, I've used them. Again, it's kind of a question mark on that. I don't know if it's really going to hold up or not. Are they going to last? So here I have a penny, 1988. It looks great, but it's going to end up looking like this probably if I use it a lot. So I don't want that. I don't want it to turn into melted mess. If you take an electrical conduit box and you have the little knockouts where you knock out the little part and you end up with a washer made out of steel, those are perfect. Again, not to reiterate here, but the purpose, we got to remember what the purpose of the coin is. The purpose of the coin is in case you develop too much pressure inside, that pressure will lift the object, okay, the coin, and it'll let the pressure out. So a flat steel washer would be perfect for that. Now, I'm not saying a washer like this. This washer has a hole in it. It's not going to work. It's defeating the purpose. You need a electrical box where you knock that knockout, where you're going to put your EMT connector in, right there. That's what you need. Those work perfect. You're never going to melt those. What do I do to put the flame out when I'm finished? Okay, so I've got an Arizona tea can alcohol burner, we'll call it. I have the bottom of another can, and I've made a snuffing device. So you just put that on top of the flame, okay, and what it does is it covers these holes, it covers them, and the flame will extinguish. And those work very good. They work very good. If you don't have one of those, say you have just another stove, but you don't have one of these snuffers, so to speak, for the lack of a better description, you don't have one of those, then what you can use is another pot. You just set a pot over the burner, and it'll take all the oxygen away, because you have to have heat, fuel, and oxygen for a flame to exist. So when you cover this, even though you still have heat and you have fuel, you have no oxygen. You take one of those layers of the triangle out, that fire will go out. So that's another option. And this is the Bud Light alcohol burner or stove. You can actually set the pot directly on top of this, so it's technically a stove. The heat comes out of the sides here. Let me get my flashlight for you. Show you the inside here. See the inside of that? That's pretty cool, huh? So the heat comes out of these holes, and this is a thick aluminum. These are those Bud Light bottles that they were making for a while, and this works good. But this amount of fuel only lasts for 25 minutes on this particular one. I wrote that on the bottom, 25 minutes. But they work good. So all these fuels and stuff work the same. Now, a lot of people were asking which design, because I've done the penny can design, and I've also done the other design where you score the inside of the can out, and you just pour the fuel right in there. There's nothing in here. You just got a liquid inside. I don't have any of those obviously up here, and that's because it's not my favorite design. I like the penny can probably the most of these. Well, the Bud Light works good too. But the simplest one to make is the Fancy Feast stove. Okay, and I said the word stove because you can set a pot directly on the top, and these little holes right here on the side, there's two of them. There's one on each side. Those two holes allow air to come in. So you just basically pour your alcohol inside. There's a wicking type material around here. And you set your pot on there, and these work very effective, and they're extremely easy to make. All you need is a can of tomato paste and your favorite flavor of Fancy Feast. I like turkey and giblets. So if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. It's really funny. But you take the Fancy Feast can, and then you take the tomato can, and you wrap some paper towels or some sort of napkins from your favorite restaurant, you know, McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. You wrap them around, and then this sticks inside of this, and that's what you end up with, is a stove. And they are very effective, very simple to make. Just a can of Fancy Feast and tomato paste. Very, very easy to make. Okay, so with some napkins. You can also do what I use quite often, which is the Vienna sausage version. Same thing, and I like this better because to make the Fancy Feast burner, you can see the tomato paste can is too tall, so you have to cut the can down. The Fancy Feast will hold 3 ounces of fuel, so that doesn't last very long. But if you get the Vienna sausages, you're dealing with, I think, 5 or 6 ounces of fuel. And you don't have to cut the tomato paste can. You just put some holes down in the bottom. Let me get my flashlight again. You put some holes down in the bottom. Let me see. That's a little bright. Let's go to the dimmer setting. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but you got some holes down there to allow the fuel to get into the wick. And all you're doing is you're putting them in the same place. So you're basically putting holes in the same place on the top and bottom of the can. So you see you got 2 of them. One on each. There's a good view of it. You've got that going on. And the same thing is on the bottom. You don't have to cut the tomato paste can. You just stick it inside of there, and it works really, really good. So that option is probably my favorite out of all of these, is the Vienna sausage stove. Works good. Do these stoves or burners actually perform? I mean, can you actually boil some water and things like that? Are they effective? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, you can see here 5 minutes and 34 seconds on my timer, right? 5:34 was the time that it took to boil half of a liter, which is just above 16 ounces of water. So half a liter in 5:34. It worked good, and I did it in this pot right here. Now these Fancy Feast and tomato paste can Vienna sausage type stoves, you can set your pot directly on them, and they work good. Because you've got the wick right here, and you're about an inch above the flame. So the flame actually starts here at the bottom of the wick. So your pot is above, you know, like I said, that 1 inch is that sweet spot. Same thing with the Fancy Feast. You've got 3/4 of an inch to an inch above the wick where your pot's sitting. So that's perfect distance. These work really good. And the same thing here on the Bud Light. You got a little bit of space above those holes. So those are really true stoves. These are more burners. One of my favorite things to use for a pot support system for these burners over here is the Sternal stove base. Okay, you can purchase these at Walmart in the sporting goods section. They're about $5 or $6. They're made out of aluminum and steel, and they're really nice. The only downside that I see to them is when you put your burner in there, it's pretty low to where your pot would sit, okay? So you're more than that 1 inch sweet spot. So what I do is I take a little block of wood. This is just some crappy little plywood that I had sitting outside. I set that plywood inside there, and it raises it just enough to where if you were to take a tape measure, you've got about an inch above the holes here where the flames come out to where your pot's actually going to be sitting. So you will be in that sweet spot. You can also close this door, and what happens is with that door closed, all 4 directions of this are protected from the wind. Okay, so you got a nice wind protection there. You've got your burner inside. And another thing that's cool about that is all of your heat is inside of that box, and it's channeled straight up into your pot. That's a really good option for holding your burner, right? Just that Sternal stove base. They're not that expensive, and they work very good. A metal coat hanger from the house, you can take that and make one of these guys. So what I've done is I've measured 3 1/4 high, 3 1/4 wide, and 3 1/4 down. And I take some baling wire, and I just make 3 of these things, and I wire them together. And that makes a very nice, effective pot support system to go over these burners. Okay, so I just set it just like that, and take a look at that. You've got about an inch above, so you're definitely in the sweet spot. They have plenty of strength to hold your pot. This pot will hold 30 ounces of water, and this holds it no problem. In fact, I've made a few of them. They're very easy to make. They fold up, you put them in your bag, and they don't weigh anything. You basically forget about it, that they're even there. They don't weigh nothing, and they're very simple to make. I have a video that I've done showing you how I make these. Very easy. If you want an extremely light one, you can use baling wire only, okay? But this is for like if you're going to be using a titanium pot and you're only going to boil maybe 2 cups of water, 16 ounces or something like that at the most, and you want something extremely lightweight. This is the same thing, but it's a lot more flimsy compared to these ones that are made out of the coat hangers. But they do work. Okay, so you're definitely, if you're cutting weight and you're trying to make things as light as possible, that's definitely an option for you. When it comes to the priming process, some people were asking, now on these ones here, the Fancy Feast and the Vienna sausage, those don't have too much priming. The Fancy Feast and the Vienna sausage, those things go right now. They light up very well. Bud Light takes a little bit of time to prime, and of course these penny can stoves, they take a little time to prime. Now, people have asked, you know, can you use gasoline to prime? Yeah, you can. So basically, if you have one of these guys, and say you're setting that baby, set that pot sport out of the way. Say you're setting that there, and you're outside, and you're on a big piece of bedrock or something, or you're out in the woods on some dirt or something like that. What I generally do is I'll take that fuel and I'll pour it in the top here. Once it's full, once it stops, when the penny's out of the way and it stops receiving fuel, it'll start to pull up in this area right here. And then I'll put the penny in the way, and then I'll pour a little bit all around this thing. I mean, on the ground and everything, and I'll light it, and it's a big ball of flame. And that heat that's produced will help prime this thing faster, and it'll come to a flume a lot quicker. That's another reason why I like the heat the most, because this is like 12 ounces of fuel. I cut the bottom off of this one, made a funnel, but there's 12 ounces of fuel, and so you get like 3 fillings out of one bottle. So the cool thing is, when you're done, you can fill this again with denatured alcohol, or make your special mix or whatever you're going to do 50-50 like Manland did. And these bottles are really nice. They make it very convenient and very easy to pour. You just take the lid off, kind of get it a little sideways, and they pour very well. That's why I like these bottles. Plus the fuel inside is excellent fuel. Some Germex or some of this hand sanitizer doesn't need to be aloe. It could be the plain Jane stuff. But this stuff works really good if you just squirt a little bit in the top. It has ethanol in it. I'm looking here. Ethanol alcohol, 62%. So you'll basically squirt a little bit of that in the top there, and you can light that up. You can even dribble it around the side, and it'll help prime your stove a little quicker. So that's about all the questions that I can think of offhand about these stoves and burners. I want to say thank you for joining me today on this video. I hope that this information helped you out. Please feel free to leave your comments down below. Like this video, share this video, and as always, again folks, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a beautiful day. Now get out there and make one of these guys. These are my favorites. These work really good. We'll talk to you later.